Union Law and Information Technology Minister Ravi Shankar Prasad has hit out at Twitter, accusing the microblogging platform of being high-handed and taking arbitrary action. This after Twitter blocked his account for about an hour, allegedly for copyright violation. The minister insists Twitter is not a harbinger of free speech in India, but pursuing its own agenda. Shashi Tharoor, chairman of the Parliamentary Standing Committee on Information Technology too, had his account blocked briefly. Rahul Srivastav brings you a top story on India First.
A massive escalation in the centre versus Twitter war. The social media website locked Union IT Minister Ravi Shankar Prasad out of his account for almost an hour over alleged copyright infringement. The minister denied access to the Twitter account, took to Indian social media app Coup to hit out at the American giant. Prasad said Twitter's actions indicate they are not the harbinger of free speech and are only interested in running their own agenda.
The action of Twitter smacks of vindictiveness against the IT minister. It shows the arbitrariness that prevails when Twitter takes decisions.
Twitter has confirmed that Ravi Shankar Prasad's account was restricted due to US Digital Millennium Copyright Act and that the tweet has now been withheld. The Digital Millennium Copyright Act is a law in the USA that controls access to copyrighted works. Sources in the Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology claim the minister had posted clips from interviews he gave to several TV channels. The minister had read the riot act to Twitter for not implementing IT guidelines in a recent interview to India Today.
A very simple, straight question. Why should you be reluctant to enforce a mechanism? You are giving an impression that we are having a system of checking whether this particular presentation is manipulated or not. Why you have double standards on that? These questions have to be asked.
Twitter's action against Ravi Shankar Prasad evoked sharp reactions from opposition ranks as well.
So this is not something that it is minister specific, and I do not know why minister is making this about the Twitter platform or the social media platform. These are issues that have been unaddressed by the Information Broadcasting Ministry, by the IT Ministry, and it is coming back to bite them.
Congress MP Shashi Tharoor, who heads the parliamentary panel on IT, tweeted that the panel will seek an explanation from Twitter's Indian subsidiary. Tharoor pointed out that he too faced similar action by the social media app in the past.
Ravi Shankar Prasad, through a spate of tweets, very clearly said if Twitter wants to stay in the country, then Twitter will need to follow the Indian laws. He also somewhere believes what Twitter is doing is just to intimidate him and the government. Ravi Shankar Prasad also says he will not be intimidated, and if anyone wants to do business in the country, they are welcome, but they will have to make sure they follow the Indian laws and rules. This is Aishwarya Paliwal reporting from New Delhi for India Today with camera person Alok Das.
And India Today has now accessed details of this complaint allegedly sent to Twitter, on the basis of which Twitter claims the IT minister's account was locked. Twitter, we are told through sources, this action was taken by Twitter on Ravi Shankar Prasad for a tweet in 2017. The tweet's content had an A.R. Rahman song, Ma Tujhe Salam. Twitter received this complaint against a 2017 tweet on the 25th of June. I quickly want to cut across to India Today's Aishwarya Paliwal, joining us for more on the story. Aishwarya, bring us details. Who was the complainant on a 2017 tweet? Action is taken in the middle of 2021.
Well, definitely, Gaurav, it is something which is now being looked at, and it really is for everyone's guess. Everyone at the moment is now looking at why this is something which has happened. Now, let me tell you, the complainant actually is Sony Entertainment. The complaint, however, was received by Twitter today. And within a couple of hours, we are seeing this kind of action being taken. But let me remind you, the tweet was of 2017. So definitely questions are now being raised as to why the complaint was sent today. From what we have accessed, we clearly can see the recipient being Twitter and the action also being taken by Twitter. Within a couple of hours, action was taken. So definitely a lot of questions being raised as to why a 2017 tweet is.
Aishwarya, for the moment, many thanks for joining me. Now, it's also being asked, should Twitter not have sent a notice to a user before taking action? Is Twitter's action innocent, or is this a signal to the Narendra Modi government? Joining me on India First is Tuhin Sinha, representing the Bharatiya Janata Party. Also with me is Kanishk Gaur. He's the founder of India Future Foundation. And Kanishk, if I may, is there merit in the Law and IT Minister saying Twitter is warning the people in India, if you don't follow Twitter's line, if you don't toe Twitter's line, they will remove you from the platform?
We must understand in greater detail what has the issue been. There is a body called as International Federation of Phonographic Industry, which filed a complaint on behalf of Sony Entertainment, because Sony Entertainment has the copyrights to the song Ma Tujhe Salam. Now this complaint was filed and this was made public. So there is a database called as the Lumen database, which is a transparency initiative in partnership with the Berkman Klein Center at Harvard. This was made, and Mr. Ravi Shankar Prasad was informed that his account will be logged, and Mr. Ravi Shankar Prasad can actually file a complaint and saying that his account should not be logged, and he was informed about it. The same case happened with Mr. Shashi Tharoor erstwhile as well, and Mr. Shashi Tharoor has also tweeted about this. The same case has happened. So the account was logged, and Twitter did their investigation, and then they found that the Mr. Ravi Shankar Prasad account should not be withheld. They released the account, but they withheld that particular tweet. Now,
Tuhin Sinha, the minister's tweet was in violation of Twitter rules. Why is the minister upset? You have Priyanka Chaturvedi of the Shiv Sena saying it's not minister specific.
Well, Twitter certainly seems to be on a suicide mission, because Twitter's action today is a clear violation of Rule 4/8 of the new IT Intermediary Guidelines and Media Ethics Code. It needs to send a notice, a prior intimation to the person whose account will be, locked, or against whose account action will be taken. So if Twitter does not think it is necessary to follow the new IT guidelines with specific reference to the intermediary guidelines, it clearly shows that Twitter does not take those laws seriously. And that is where the problem realizes.
Okay, you're saying Twitter's on suicide mission. What does it mean? What do you mean by saying Twitter's on suicide mission?
So the question is to me, right?
Yes.
So Twitter certainly seems to be happy to give up its status as an intermediary, which makes it very apparent that Twitter is happy to be liable for court cases for all the content published on it. So Twitter needs to figure out, is this the way it wants to operate in the country? We were happy to see it as an intermediary, which we believe it still is.
Okay.
But Twitter, first on account of non-conformity on the issue of appointment of the 3 required officers, and now by a clear violation of Rule 4/8 of the new IT guidelines, has made it very clear it does not want to be seen as an intermediary.
Jitin Jain, Shashi Tharoor, Chairman of Parliamentary Standing Committee on Information Technology, says an explanation will be sought from Twitter, but talks about his account also being locked briefly. So is there a message here in your appreciation, or is Twitter actually following its own rules? No message being sent to Government of India by the microblogging platform.
First of all, first thing what we must clarify, that the law says that for any third party content, if you want to remove of any user, or you want to restrict the content, or you want to block or restrict his account, you have to give him an advance notice. In this case, Mr. Prasad, who technically is a private affected party, was not given any notice, not for this time, not for any previous violations. And as you rightly told just now, this is a 2017 tweet. Now, second, a East India company which is continuously flouting and brazenly defying legal orders given by the government, authorities in riot situations, on an event where people are calling for genocides.
Yes.
A company which is continuously refusing to comply with Indian law passed by the Parliament of India, thinking of itself as some, sovereign entity sitting on some island where no law applies on them, today is attempting to apply a DMCA, act, which is a US law in Indian territory. Can you imagine a foreign company is willing to, ignore, defy, insult Indian law and Indian parliament, Indian citizenry, now wants an Indian IT minister to get his account blocked for some unknown US law.
Kanish God, please respond. The law minister, okay, the law minister says this is Twitter's high-handedness. He's termed the microblogging platform's actions as arbitrary because no notice was sent to him before taking this action, no explanation sought from the minister. Is Twitter actually behaving like judge, jury and executioner here?
See, we must understand this company is registered in the US. Their servers are hosted in the US. The data they collect is hosted in the US. And they are first compliant to US laws because they claim themselves to be a US company. They believe that it is first the US law which is mandatory for them, and they uphold the US law as first. So the bigger issue remains is that India does not have a data protection law to safeguard its citizens. It does not have a data protection law to safeguard its own IT minister. That's the bigger issue that we are looking at today. So
we indeed
that we should look at it. We should first have a data protection law in place. We should bring in data localization. So the companies that are having these tweets host this data locally and then are held liable and accountable as per the Indian law, and they respect the Indian law.
But they don't respect the Indian law is what the BJP alleges. The BJP spokesperson and leader says that Twitter is on suicide mission in India. But Tuhin Sinha, is there perhaps a realization that the government's bark is worse than its bite? Government set rules in February, gave Twitter or all platforms, social media platforms till May to comply. Then out of what the government claims is generosity of its heart, gave them a grace period. Even police sought information. Twitter is making the police and the government run around in circles, sir.
Gaurav, today is the 46th anniversary of emergency. And one thing we are very clear is that we will not have the emergency mindset, which the Congress has. We run the country by the rule of the law. And you are aware that even the Parliamentary Committee on IT, which met Twitter officials last year, has made it very clear in unanimity. In fact, I must compliment Shashi Tharoor because unlike Rahul Gandhi, he has shown immense maturity on this issue of national importance. And all the members of that panel have made it very clear to Twitter that there is no other option for Twitter but to comply with the new guidelines.
And yet they don't appear to be doing so.
No, because if we behave in a retributive manner, like Twitter has apparently behaved with Shri Ravi Shankar Prasad ji, they would have a legal recourse. We are not, we won't behave like Nigeria or Turkey. But rest assured, whatever time it takes, Twitter knows that it is going to be facing action again this time. It will not get away with the impunity which it thought it has. And which is why, Twitter needs to fall in line. I don't know what makes
Twitter needs to fall in line. Again, merit in the criticism that your bark is worse than your bite. Jitin Jain, merit in the government minister saying Twitter is running its own agenda in India.
Obviously, it looks, because of the timing, what they've done. And what is the notice? That please read the notice and the terms and conditions. Once you agree to comply with our policy, we will then give you access and unblock your account. I wish Indian IT minister could have said that read the IT Act, IT rules. Till the time you comply, we will not allow you to access Indian market. That day should come. Anyways, Kanish said something very interesting. It is a US company. Their servers are in US. They are registered in US. So they will first comply with US law. Mark my words, Gaurav. Frame this statement in the big golden words, and all these people who were opposing Aadhaar, accusing Aadhaar as a Nazi surveillance regime because they wanted to take your fingerprints or biometrics for the larger good of society, where every democracy in the world is doing it. Same people are happy to show a thumbs up photos after applying for a US visa and give all fingerprints. Same people then started defending WhatsApp when they were collecting all your data, saying that this is necessary because of business and privacy policy, they will cooperate with law enforcement. When WhatsApp put a gunpoint on 40
Sir,
crore people in India that if you
sure,
do not
but that's not
comply
today's
with our policy in
issue.
3 months,
Jitin
we
Jain,
will
you're
block you.
digressing.
Today,
Is Twitter following
second.
its own agenda in India, as the minister claims?
Ek
Is there
second.
merit in that criticism? Is there merit in that criticism? Because Twitter and Kanishk also simply say there is a rule. Twitter is following that rule. If you want to follow that rule beyond that micro-blogging platform, you don't want to follow that platform rule, then don't be on that platform.
Gaurav, these are the same people who oppose government when they blocked 59 apps, Chinese apps originally, and they said the government is doing an arbitrary action. This is a global world. How
I
can
don't
you
think
block these
Kanishk,
apps?
no, I don't think Kanishk anybody hit out at the government for blocking Chinese apps, because those
No, we
Chinese apps
No,
were...
they did. Media Nama did. Media Nama did. And you know what happened? This is what the government said. A foreign company registered in a foreign company will follow the foreign law.
Twitter's actions are arbitrary. The government says Twitter's actions are arbitrary. BJP leaders' tweets, they were marked manipulated media. But even after police investigations, a Ghaziabad video, which was called a hate video, it wasn't a hate video according to the police, but an altercation between two people. Twitter's response has been subpar. So isn't Twitter actually following an agenda in our country? It's not an intermediary. It does appear to be following its line.
See, the issue is the intermediary guidelines, the way they are framed, it still has a lot of areas to improve.
Be that as it may. Be that as it may. No, Kanishk, I've asked you a very specific question. Twitter marks a BJP leader's tweet as manipulated media, but even when the police talk about a Ghaziabad video and say it's manipulated, what is Twitter's response, Kanishk?
See, you need to understand, Twitter as an organization is in so many countries. There would be their own rules through which they mark tweets, and there might be not even human people who would be sitting behind. There would be algorithms that would be running. But the way those algorithms are designed would be different the way we see it in India, right? So something
I don't think so, sir. I seriously don't think so. I mean, you are giving... okay, Jitin wants to come in. Jitin, is this how it functions? Because even after government reaches out to Twitter, is an algorithm responding, or are officials turning a blind eye to what the government wants? Jitin.
I don't care what algorithm they're following or it's a human intervention. It appears that this is a for-profit company who thinks that copyright of a private company is far more superior to the right of a life of individuals living in India. If a government gives a notice that there might be rights, people might lose life, please remove certain contents, they don't respond. But if a private US company gives a copyright notice, they block the account of an IT minister without any notice. So this whole harbinger of free speech, facade of protecting right of free speech of people is all fake propaganda in a garb to create a political divide in India and avoid tax laws and avoid Indian laws and avoid any accountability in India.
And I mean, just how powerless is the government to get its writ accepted? Twitter's making money in India, flourishing in India, not following rules, not following government instructions, even on sensitive cases like the Ghaziabad video. And what is the government doing? It's, tell me, writ of Twitter versus writ of government of India. Tuhin Sinha.
Gaurav, there are two aspects to the problem. One is Twitter's apparent defiance towards Indian laws in totality, for which all political parties should be together, and I'm glad at least lately they are. But the other issue is, which you just highlighted, is the issue of partisan behavior, where you need to be a Sharjil Imam, where you need to be a Shaila Rashid, where you need to be, a Rana Ayub to get respect. But the blue tick of the Honorable Vice President of India or the RSS chief can be removed at will. So both of these have been consistently contested by the government. Like I said, today it's very easy for us to use the emergency mindset and clamp down Twitter. But they would have a legal recourse. We are going by the law of the land, and rest assured that it's a matter of a few weeks. The parliamentary panel have been unanimous in pinning down Twitter for its non-compliance, for its defiance, and Twitter also knows that it has its back against the wall. So
you may think so in 2022. Will that be the situation in 2024, given the fact that if the law of the land is to be followed, it needs to be followed in toto? But no, I don't want to go into what individuals have a blue tick or they don't have a blue tick. But is there a gradual escalation? Kanishka, I want you to respond to this. Is there a gradual escalation in Twitter's actions? First against a spokesperson, marking a tweet manipulated or not. Then when government seeks clarity, even the IT minister's Twitter account is blocked. In the US, a president's account was blocked. All of this seems to indicate that it's the republic of Twitter versus elected governments.
See, we need to understand, we need laws, we need stronger laws. Now, if you look at the DMCA, the Digital Millennium Copyright Act, it was framed in 1998. And look at it today, how strong it is, how hyperactive the regulator is today. But today, let's look at Indian laws, the intermediary guidelines, which came during the midst of a pandemic, and you gave them 3 months to comply. And then you have been harboring on the data protection bill for a long time. More importantly, you need to understand these companies still don't have an entity in India, right? And then you send them legal notices to which they don't respond. You send them notices, they will come back with guidelines saying that we are not there in India, so we are not required to comply to these guidelines. First, it's really important for us to analyze without harassing the people, the Indian people who are working in these companies, which could be the MD of the company, which could be the marketing person of the company. Don't bring in criminal liability on them. Give them more time to comply to these guidelines, enforce stronger operating procedures. These are 3 things which are much required to bring in companies like Twitter and others like Signal and Telegram inline, because these companies don't even exist in India and they have a large user base.
They have a large user base, they make money in India, they flourish in India, and yet they do not follow the rules and laws of India. Are they cocking a snook at the government? And this is perhaps time for the government to sit back, think and act. Okay, Jitan, last 30 seconds, you want to respond.
You know, in the case of Tharoor Sahab, they withheld a tweet. In the case of Ravi Shankar Sahab, they withheld the entire account. Tell me which algorithm operates in a 2 different manner for 2 different individuals. So don't lecture us on this AI business. Second, you know, one simple thing. These are monsters who will not comply with any law. So don't believe that, and this has got nothing to do with data protection bill, nothing at all. Even if you bring a data protection act, these companies will not comply. They are not complying with your law today. They will not comply with your law tomorrow.
Is it because perhaps they know, and it's for Tuhin Sena and his party and his government to think, whether the bark is worse than the bite. To all my guests, many thanks for joining me.